So, has Nomos finally met its match from a new but old fellow German brand? What's up, guys? It's your boy Rich here, back at it again. And let's go take a look at the Dufa Aalto. Let's go. And here it is, the Dufa Aalto. And Dufa is short for Deutsch Uhrenfabrik, and I know I just messed that up, so I will put the name on the screen. It is in 42 millimeters, 50 millimeters from lug to lug, 13 millimeters thin, and with a 20 millimeter lug width. And the first thing that caught my eye is, well, it's the dial. I think this watch is minimalism done to perfection, because it is not an easy thing to do to nail the look of a minimalist watch. If we go too far off to one side, it's just too cluttered. And if we do too little to it, it just looks like no effort has been done to it, and we're just trying to pass it off as a minimalist watch. So I think Dufa did an outstanding job with this watch, and I do think this dial is really cool. And what caught my eye first is this power reserve right there, the power reserve indicator at 12 o'clock. You can see the black part of it is where that's emptied, and the blue is how much of the power reserve is left. So it looks like about 3/4 of the power reserve is left. And there are 4 areas of interest on the dial right there at 12 o'clock. And the power reserve is right under the Dufa name, which is applied. And the second area of interest is at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9. And at 3 o'clock is the month, at 6 o'clock is a date, and the days of the week is at 9 o'clock. And on the dial, we will see that it says made in Germany. And that's because it is made in Germany. And I know there has been some confusion about the origins of the Dufa, but it is actually hand assembled in Roulet, Germany. And I got that on good information directly from the manufacturer. Dufa is a brand that has been resurrected. If we're wondering what this really flat pusher is right here, well, because this watch is a full calendar watch, this is used to change the month, and we can simply insert a toothpick right there. But this watch will automatically change the months after the 31st day. But if we're in a month that only has 30 days or 29 days like in February, we might want to use that. But we can also change the month by manually changing the date right down here. There is so much detail on this minimalist watch.
Huh?
I know, it's confusing. How much detail can there be on a minimalist watch? But there is. And if we take a closer look at the dial, we can see at the outer edge of it, right where it meets the chapter ring, it suddenly breaks downwards. And we'll notice the same thing with the minute hand and the long second hand. At the tips, they break downwards, perfectly meeting the edge of the dial. So from some angles, it creates a really nice dramatic look. And I like that kind of attention to detail. And if we continue with the side profile of the watch, we notice that it is just so different. It just contrasts so differently with the front of the watch. The front of the watch is pretty simple, round case and the lugs. And then so much different on the side. You know, on the side, it looks like a bowl. And if we start with the domed crystal there, it is a mineral crystal, but it is coated with the sapphire layering. I do prefer sapphire crystals, but I'll take the extra layer of protection on a mineral crystal. And then it looks like on the polished finish right under the domed crystal, it looks like there are 2 layers, but it's actually really 1. And that's because they beveled the polished finish right there, which is a really nice detail, and it gives the illusion that there are 2 layers. But then it is actually separated by a brushed layering right there before it continues with the polished finish. This dial is really easy to stare at. It is just done so nicely. It has the blue, which is the color that they use for the power reserve indicator right there on the seconds hand, and along the chapter ring with the accents of blue there. It just comes together really nicely. This dial is in gray, though it does come across as a little bit of an olive color, but the other options are in white, blue, and black. The strap that comes with the watch is actually really nice. It's in a nubuck. And there is the Dufa branding right there on the buckle. And on the flip side of the strap, we can see that it is lined in rubber. And I like it when the straps are lined with rubber because it extends the life of it. It just protects it from our oils and sweat and creases. And the branding continues right there throughout the strap. And it is a self adjusting strap system, which means it doesn't require any tools to change out the straps. We just simply have to push out the pins. And now let's take a look at the movement. It is powered by a Citizen Miyota 9100, but it is heavily modified. So for example, they had to remove the 24-hour sub-register, move the date window to 6 o'clock, and change the day-month's power reserve pointers into discs. And I think they did a really nice job finishing this movement with their own custom rotor. It looks like it's black, but it's actually in a very rich navy. I think they did a really nice job heavily modifying this movement, and they had to do a lot of accommodations here to fit all these discs into this watch, which might explain some of the thickness of the 13 millimeters, though I don't think it wears thick at all. So let me show you. It doesn't actually wear thick at all. I think it's very well proportioned. This is a lot of watch. It's very different, very cool, and very well made. There is a lot of attention to detail on this minimalist watch. And the price of the Dufa is $650. And we're back. And I think Dufa is positioned uniquely, and that's to their benefit. Germany doesn't produce an overabundance of watches the way Switzerland does. We definitely have no shortage of Swiss-made watches. And every watch that seems to come out of Germany seems to be only really good quality. They have their super high-end ones, Lange, Glashütte, even Mühle Glashütte. But then there's a separate segment that I think Dufa can compete with, such as Zinn or Junghans or Nomos. And I actually think Dufa can leapfrog past Junghans, because Junghans is not what they once were. They are not the brand and the prestigious brand that they used to be when they had their glory days back in the day. Even their flagship Max Bill is not a watch that it used to be. Back in the day, the Max Bill used to have its own in-house movement. Not anymore. So this is why I think Dufa can leapfrog past Junghans. I mean, Junghans is... It just seems to be a brand that's kind of sort of just hanging on, and they are not growing. They've reached their peak, and that's it. Unless they do something really drastic with an entirely new line of watches, and I can't seem to speak today. Dufa is definitely fresher, and I think they can position themselves really nicely, squarely up against Junghans. With Nomos, I think it is going to be a challenge, and I don't think that they can leapfrog past Nomos anytime soon. Nomos is firmly established as the entry-level luxury premier watch for Germany, and they are actually the gateway to German watches. It is not a Lange or Glashütte, because those are really high-end watches out of reach for most of us. And I think Nomos is the epitome of a representation of Germany, because it gets us talking about German-made watches. And because Nomos has an excellent reputation, that is very helpful for German-made watches. I think Dufa can continue to help themselves with continued marketing, a greater presence, and an improved website. These watches are simply too good not to have a first-class website, first-class presentation, because perception is everything. And I know they are still new in terms of being resurrected, and I believe they will eventually have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed. These watches are definitely worth our time. Perhaps a little pun intended there. We are getting a lot of watch for the money, a lot of watch, and they are doing some great things internally. They are not simply using a Citizen Miyota movement out of the box and covering it up in their cases. They are doing a great job heavily modifying the movements, nicely finishing them, and completing it with their own custom rotors. This is a lot like what IWC used to do. These watches are definitely worth our consideration. And even though I'm the one who raised the issue of which other German brands Dufa can leapfrog past, they may not have to. And here's an argument to my own debate. Nomos and Dufa are not apples and apples. Most of Nomos watches are pretty simple. They're uncomplicated watches. They have a really nice world time, but even one of their flagships like the Club is pretty simple. It's either time only or with a date function. So their in-house movements are not going to be overly complicated nor real masterful work of art. Masterful's work of art. They are nicely decorated by Nomos, but it is not the kind of movement that we would expect from a $50,000 watch. So I don't think that Dufa can or needs to compete against them, because their watches are a lot different than Nomos. They have great complications, whether it's the Aalto or the Albers. I mean, the Albers kind of sort of reminds me of an Lange. These complications are great, and if Dufa ever decided to make an in-house movement with these types of functions, they would be really expensive. In fact, they would not even be in the same class as a Zin or Junghans or Nomos any longer. They would probably be competing against Glasuta, and that may not be the best idea. I think Dufa is on the right path, and if we accept them for who they are, as a budget-friendly watch without having a budget feel to it, meaning these watches don't have a cheap feel to it. They are very well made and even have a luxurious feel to it. Then I think we will appreciate a really well-made, attractive watch with a lot of great complications. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you the next time. And Dufa stands for Deutsch Umberik. Deutsch Umberik. Deutsch Umberik. I adore many German-made watches. Alange Glasuta. I think that's a wrap.